In this quick video, I wanted to do an overview of this return to work process. Around the world, millions of workers are now starting to come back to the office after COVID-19, and we need an easy way that people can request to come in and yet make sure that we don't have everyone back in the office at the same time so that we can maintain our social distancing requirements. What we have here is a return to work office request using Nintex Forms with an Nintex workflow behind the scenes. This is built using Nintex for Office 365 and is really made up of a couple different parts. So let's go ahead and take a look at how the form works, and then we'll take a look at the behind the scenes. So here on my form, I actually have a link out to my return to office process that I have hosted in ProMap if I ever need to go and look at that. And then I'm going to request which week I'd like to come back into the office. And I'm going to say the week of the 15th. And so what happens here is that it already knows who I am, and I'm signed in as Ford Burton, and then it'll automatically build this request title for me, gives me my start date, the week end date, and then how many different spots are open in the various different zones. Now we've decided to break our office into 3 different work zones, and we know that we can only have 10 employees in each one of those zones to maintain our social distancing. So what I can do is I can select my desired work zone, and then I have to sign my health waiver. We'll say done. And then I can submit this. What will happen then is that this request will go in, be approved by my manager, and then I'll have my calendar updated by the workflow. Now let's go ahead and actually take a look at how this works. Here in SharePoint, I have a list that actually has my requests that are coming in, and those requests are being facilitated using a Nintex form. In this form, we've selected our requested week, and this is going to be a lookup to our request availability list with the list view of available dates, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. Just a display type of dropdown, and everything else is set to default. The employee name, this is being built of the current user's display name, so that's the default value, and this is a people picker control. And then our request title is actually going to be populated using a rule here, where we are grabbing the current user's display name plus work from office request week of, and then it's going to grab this formatted date. And if we wanted to change this, we could say months, then days, and that would work too. We then have our start date and our end date. These are also being set by rules. So this is pulling the week start date, and the end date works the same way. And then we have some formulas here where we're pulling our zone availability. Now the way that we're doing that is with variables. So if I come in here and go to my zone availability, I'm actually using the lookup function to look at our request availability list, and we're going to get the requested week and the number from the requested week field in zone 1. And I'm doing the same for the other 2 zones as well. This is just a choice field connected to our work zone, and then I've got my signature field. So let's go ahead and take a look at this request availability list that I've been referencing with some of these controls. This is a list, and on here we've got a couple different data points. Our title, which is just the week from the start date to the end date. Notice that these are the work days, not including weekends. And then we have our 3 different zones and how many different available slots there are in each zone. Notice some of these are already taken up, and because I've set my available dates view to exclude those, they don't get surfaced on my form, as I don't want someone selecting items that aren't available. But what about this, say, week of the 6/22? I've got a 0 here in my zone 1, so what would happen if someone went and selected that data? Well, let's jump back to our form and take a look at that. So if I was to put in a new request, and we come into 6/22, so I see this zone 1 has 0 spots, like we saw, and if I was to say zone 1 and then try to submit this, I get an error that says you must select a work zone that has availability. So let's take a look at how we did that. In here, on our rules, we have our Zone 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3 availability validation rules. And this essentially just says if the zone availability is equal to 0, then you have to show this validation error. Awesome. So let's go ahead and take a look at the workflow that runs in the background here, because I have actually received an email. And as we can see here, this is an email that is reminding me that I've been scheduled from the 15th to the 19th, and that when I arrive in the office, I'll be asked to check in and then find an open desk within my work zone. We've also got some references to our COVID FAQs, and then a note that we'll get a reminder the morning of the 19th to ensure that we clean our workstation before leaving for the day, as there is no guarantee that we'll be working at the same workstation the next week. So let's go ahead and take a look at this workflow and see how we're doing that. So this workflow will trigger on item creation. And first, it will query the requested weeks. And so we'll look at our request availability. We'll look for that start date. And we're going to grab the ID of that start date. And then for that start date, we're actually going to go through, and depending on which work zone was selected, we're actually going to get the number of open spots that are available when the request was submitted. Then we're going to subtract 1 from that number of open spots. And then we're going to update that back to the list. This will subtract the spots from our request so that we can see when we go back to our list that because we requested work in Zone 2 on the start date of the 15th and it was at 9, we should see now on the 15th the work Zone 2 is now gone down to 8. After that, we'll send a notification to the user's manager and then to the employee themselves. And then we'll go ahead and pause until the end date, and then send them that notification for cleaning up and going home. I hope this overview has given some sense of how you can leverage Nintex Workflow and Nintex Forms to help streamline your process of helping your employees return to the office as we continue to work through this unique time in history. If there are any questions, feel free to reach out or visit us at community.nintex.com.